Watch this.
Finally Friday, congratulations, you made it through the week, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Friday 208. In about 3 months, Idahoans will return to the polls for the November general election. Seems a little far off, right? Still enjoying summer? Well, it's not that far away if you're an election coordinator. They're in the thick of getting everything ready right now. And one of the most important factors to a successful election day, poll workers and volunteers that very literally keep the election going. Now, poll workers help ensure that things run smoothly and that issues like long lines at the polls are addressed. Well, what if there aren't enough poll workers? Over in Canyon County, election officials are being proactive ahead of Election Day, working to get volunteers to work the polls. There were some serious issues during the May primary in places across Idaho, but having a solid roster of volunteers helps cut down on those issues. Canyon County understands that. Oh, and by the way, they'll pay you to work on Election Day. So we popped over to Canyon County today to find out about what they need in the 2C and what issues they're working to avoid. It was a dramatic rush through the May primary election to set up the general election coming up in November. That election will solidify Idaho leadership across the state, including the state's top positions. Over in Canyon County, they're already preparing for Election Day, and they're looking for some help.
We're looking to hire additional poll workers for the November election specifically. We plan on having additional polling locations open, so we need the more bodies.
Joe Decker, spokesman for Canyon County, says the plan is to have more locations so people have more options to vote at.
We've been able to identify locations that maybe weren't available in the past. You know, and we've constantly, with COVID, we had a hard time finding polling places due to the social distancing. With some of those restrictions lifted, we can go back into some of the smaller places that we've been to. So yeah, I think just having more polling places is better for everybody.
But those locations need volunteers to run the election.
Absolutely. Like this past May, we thought we were fully staffed and we had a few poll workers who decided not to show up. Caused kind of a panic, but we were able to get it taken care of. So the bigger we can build that roster up, we have backups to fill in case somebody does get sick or doesn't show up.
In recent years, there's been a lot of talk about the security of elections across Idaho. There are no documented wide-scale issues, yet some Idahoans continue to question the process. If you want to see the process play out, volunteering at a polling location is a direct look at the entire process.
Like, we encourage you, please come be a poll worker. See from inside how our process works and how safe and secure Idaho elections are. Like, this is the best way to learn how the election process in Idaho works, and you'll, at the end of the day, you'll leave it knowing that these are safe and secure elections throughout the state of Idaho.
And you guys are paying people?
Yeah, and we pay them $149 for a day. Election days are long. You start about 7 in the morning, go to about 9 p.m. But there's additional opportunities if we do have 2 or 3 early voting places that they can work those days as well.
So what are the qualifications? Who can work a polling day on Election Day?
You basically have to be 16 years old and a U.S. citizen to apply. And we're asking people, even if they've applied in the past, maybe reapply, go to our website, canyonco.org/pollworker, resubmit your application. That way we know you're still interested in becoming a poll worker.
The goal is to get a solid roster for November and beyond. This is to help ensure smooth and accessible elections in Canyon County.
It's nice to have a good roster of people built up so we know we have a sufficient amount of poll workers to run an election on Election Day, especially with November. You know, the governor's race, it's a bigger election. We anticipate quite a few people showing up, so to have that roster of poll workers is awesome.
It is early, but based on what Canyon County saw in the May primary, they are expecting a big turnout for the election in November. We'll keep you posted, though, about expanded polling locations. The county studied how they can best use the resources and set up the polling locations where they're needed. So as we get closer to November, we'll have all that information for you. Well, I'm sure many of you noticed we were off the air yesterday, but the news did not stop, and we did want to bring you this. Yesterday, John Cox, the attorney for former state representative and now convicted rapist Aaron von Ehlinger, he filed a motion for an acquittal or a new trial. In a 14-page document, his legal team argues that he was not given a fair trial based on witness testimony. They also say that there is new evidence and that his constitutional rights were potentially violated during the trial. According to the motion, Von Ehlinger's team believes that the state was leading a witness, sexual assault nurse Ann Wardle. Now, Cox also says in the motion that there is new evidence. He says he can prove the victim, a 19-year-old State House intern, only referred to as Jane Doe. He says that he can prove that she made conflicting statements to someone named BB. Now, that information is sealed, but he believes the evidence could have been brought up if Doe had testified and the defense was able to cross-examine her. And when he comes to having his constitutional rights violated, Mr. Von Ehlinger, that is, Cox wrote in the motion that he believes that the former lawmaker had his Sixth Amendment rights violated because Jane Doe left the stand mid-testimony and did not get the chance to face his accuser in court. However, the judge gave Cox the opportunity to file for a mistrial at the time, but he chose not to. He also did not file a subpoena for Jane Doe to testify after her first appearance. Von Ehlinger was convicted in April, and he was scheduled to be sentenced in July, but that was postponed after the defense appealed his conviction. There will be a hearing to decide if the former state representative gets a new trial. That will be on August 25th. A judge says there is enough evidence to move forward with the discrimination lawsuit filed by a former University of Idaho law professor, Shakira Sanders, who has been on the 208 here several times talking about her expertise on things like the Constitution and how it applies to the law. Well, Shakira Sanders was hired to teach law at the University of Idaho back in 2011. She was the first black woman and second person of color to be hired on as a full-time professor with the College of Law. But according to the federal lawsuit, which was filed in 2019, Sanders says that she was unfairly discriminated and retaliated against by former dean Mark Adams and interim dean Gerald Long. According to the complaint, Sanders was denied promotions, never given a raise, and retaliated against for bringing up diversity issues. The complaint also states that Sanders makes about $7,500 less than her white male counterparts who have the same credentials. The University of Idaho says they are not commenting on pending litigation, and Sanders' attorneys say that they will also not comment at this time. The trial is scheduled for October the 11th.
That cooled off just a bit today, 93. Yesterday was 99. Of course, you remember those days of 102 or so, 104. We could still see another couple of those days getting into next week. If you think about the mountains this weekend, very nice. Okay, very nice. Up here around Stanley, there may be some afternoon thunderstorms for Saturday. You might see a little smoke in this area. Not as much from McCall, but you might see just a few light showers in those areas. Now, we've had some dry months, as you know. Now, coming into June, it was pretty good. Up to about June the 12th, we had over an inch of rain. Just on June the 12th alone, there was 3/4 of an inch. Then it stopped, but we're still doing okay. Normal rainfall in July is 0.21, and we had a trace. It just stopped. Summertime stopped it. Normal rainfall in August is 0.17. We've had 1/100th of an inch, and that's the first measurable rainfall since that June 12th situation that we talked about with 3/4 of an inch of rain. So this summer so far has been very dry. But one thing just to mention too, as we get into next month, so for September, normal for September is 0.43, meaning that the precipitation starts coming up. Most of these days, there are showers that come along because of thunderstorms. And most of these thunderstorms have been missing us. But as you take a look at our satellite and radar at this point, that's not the case for Twin Falls. They've had a line of showers moving through there throughout most of the day. But here we are to the west side of that, up toward Boise. There are a few light showers and sprinkles that are starting to show up. So you could possibly see that for this evening. If you look at the wider shot, this is a little cooler air. So for tomorrow, we've got 90. And if we see a shower or even an isolated thunderstorm, it's very late for tonight. But it is developing there into the southeast corner. But then look at Twin Falls. There's all that rain going down into eastern Idaho. And if you're happening to be traveling down that way, you might see a few showers or a thunderstorm heading to the east. In the meantime, for the weekend, we're down to around 90 degrees for the high tomorrow, but the heat starts back again on Sunday. Sunshine all weekend long, but 96 degrees will be the high temperature on Sunday. Have a good weekend.
Only 96. Thank you very much, Rick. We'll keep an eye on that. Well, today will be the coolest day for the foreseeable future, but still, it is hot enough to get down on the river to cool down. However, we apparently need to go over the etiquette of river floating, the Boise River specifically. We need to go over this again because some people do not understand the basic do's and don'ts when it comes to cooling off. Darren Drinkle sent us an email this morning. He says this: I read a story about people trespassing on other people's property, seemingly to use their electricity to fill rafts to float the river. I know Barber Park used to have air specifically for that purpose. I also understand there was a decision made to remove that amenity from the park. I'm just curious as to why that decision was made and by whom. First off, yes, there's been multiple reports of people coming into the neighborhoods near Barber Park and trespassing. Some people are using those neighborhoods to park while others are taking a much more bold approach. Earlier this week, Boise police posted this video from a home near where you drop in at Barber Park. You can see someone coming up to the front door to use the home's outlets to blow up their tube. Boise police say that this has happened at several homes in the neighborhoods nearby. Don't do this at all. Now, we're not sure why anyone would need to say you shouldn't do this, but the obvious answer is don't trespass. That's why you don't do this. And as to the second part of Darren's email, yes, there used to be those air pumps at Barber Park, but those were disconnected back in 2020 by Ada County Parks and Waterways, who oversees the park. At the time, it was at the beginning of the pandemic, and during the entirety of the 2020 float season, the air stations were not available, and park visitors adapted quickly. And even though they saw a 28% increase in vehicles coming into the park, it eliminated floaters from bottlenecking the entrance to the river. Adding, it became clear that Barber Park no longer operates as efficiently during the float season with air stations. So that's the official answer. So two things to remember. Make sure your raft is either inflated before going down to float or bring an air pump with you. You can put some D batteries in it, those big ones. Also, be sure to park in the parking lot at Barber Park or at Ann Morrison Park, and you can take the shuttle up to Barber. It makes it all very simple. And our Abby Davis is covering more about the story, talking to people about how they've been impacted. You can catch her tonight on the news at 10 with her report. A few weeks ago, we told you about one of the most unique events of the summer, the 5th annual Sun Valley Tour de Force. And one of the biggest events of the weekend, the no speed limit zone in the Sawtooth National Forest. Told you about this a few Fridays ago. Well, half of the drivers that participated hit speeds of over 200 miles per hour. The fastest car this year, a 2020 Ferraro Tributo. It topped off at nearly 222 miles an hour. But the record? Oh no, they didn't hit the record. That was 253 miles an hour back in 2019. But it wasn't all just about fast and furious cars. Oh no, the big winner of the weekend was actually the Hunger Coalition of Blaine County. That event, it helped raise more than $600,000 for the nonprofit. Now, they serve those in need in Blaine County by providing healthy food to those that need it, no questions asked. They also aim to help address the root of food insecurity. And back in March, they had their busiest month of all time. They say that the money raised is enough to cover the cost of all of their children's programs and the cost of running their farm for the next year. So congratulations on a great event, $600,000 to a great cause. A lot of news happening this past week, specifically on Idaho's soon-to-be abortion laws, and we know a lot of you are asking questions about this, so we'll start with this on Tuesday.
On the day Roe and Casey were overturned, we promised that the Justice Department would work tirelessly to protect and advance reproductive freedom. That is what we are doing, and that is what we will continue to do.
The United States Department of Justice announced that it is suing the state of Idaho over its restrictive abortion ban, and that is set to go into effect later this month on August 25th. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland says that the near total abortion ban is contrary to federal law, specifically because it violates the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, or EMTALA. Now, that law says that every hospital that receives Medicare funds must give the necessary treatment to stabilize a patient when they come into the emergency room and they need care. With any condition that could put their life or their health in serious jeopardy, they have to treat them. And that treatment could involve abortion. And that's the catch right there. It's not just about life in danger, but the phrase health in serious jeopardy. For reference, there are 39 hospitals in the state of Idaho that utilize Medicare funds, thus follow EMTALA standards. They have to. Idaho's trigger law, which was passed in 2020, would make all abortions illegal except in the case of rape or incest that has been reported to law enforcement or if the mother's life is in danger. Basically, the federal law says the mother's life doesn't have to be in danger, her health just has to be. And because of the supremacy clause, which is the part of the Constitution that says federal law supersedes state law, well, Idaho's law would violate that. So why is Idaho being singled out here? Well, Garland says that Idaho's law seems, on its face, to be in direct conflict with EMTALA. And because it hasn't yet gone into effect, they want to get in front of it. But it's about asking to. They're asking for the Ninth Circuit Court to declare that Idaho's law violates the supremacy clause, thus making it an unconstitutional law. They also want an injunction to stop Idaho from enforcing it against healthcare providers who give that emergency treatment. We'll keep you posted on this. It was a big day Wednesday at the Idaho Supreme Court. Justices listened to arguments from Planned Parenthood and the state over Idaho's abortion laws. Planned Parenthood argues that the abortion laws should be paused pending further legal review. They believe the abortion laws violate Idaho law and should be prevented from going into effect. The state disagrees, saying that the abortion laws are legal and clearly written and should go into effect in a few weeks without being paused. I spoke with Idaho lawmakers on both sides of the argument. We'll start with this. House Minority Leader Alana Rubel says that she was sitting during the front row during the hearing on Wednesday and she watched the whole thing. Now, she thinks that the abortion laws here in Idaho are ridiculous, she says, for several reasons.
These laws don't read like laws that were intended to actually go into effect. They are ridiculous. Having laws that have no exception for the health of the mother and that criminalize doctors in these very gray area situations, these were not designed to me with an intent that they actually take effect. These were laws to me that were designed with an intent to get the endorsement of right to life groups and to get donations in a primary with the idea that the U.S. Supreme Court would prevent them from ever going into effect. Now they are the dog that caught the car. They were now looking at a scenario where these laws will actually go on the books and they are outrageous. And the notion of these actually being laws that people have to follow is unimaginable.
Critics maintain that the abortion laws, namely the trigger law that essentially bans all abortions in Idaho, well, they argue that the laws are unclear and leave medical providers in a gray area of whether they should do an abortion or not. The Idaho law has an exception that does allow for abortions in a case where the life of the mother is at stake. Now, House Caucus Leader, Republican Megan Blanksma, she sponsored the bill on the floor in 2020 right before it passed. I asked her this week about the critics who say that her law is vague. She believes that they're wrong and that it is written clearly. She says that there's understandable room in the law for doctors to make medical decisions.
It talks about the judgment of the doctor. Now, I think that's what we all do when we rely on medical care. And this was a big discussion that we had during COVID too, right? Is we're relying on the judgment of your medical care provider. And so it's in the legislation. And I think that oftentimes when we write legislation where we try to anticipate every single possible reaction, that's when we get into trouble. And that you need, what you're doing is trying to set a guideline when you're writing legislation and do the best job that you can as far as policy. And then there has to be some room for personal judgment, particularly when it comes to medical situations.
So where does this all stand right now? Did the Supreme Court pause the law? What's going on here? Well, right here on Friday at 5:21, we still don't know. Justices are working through it and are expected to release a court order in the coming days or weeks. The Supreme Court has no deadline to decide, but a good guess is a decision before the laws are supposed to go into effect in about 20 days. We'll keep you posted. This could happen anytime between now and the next several weeks. And on the lighter side of things, also on Wednesday, we were in the presence of one of the up-and-coming cycling stars in the entire world. 23-year-old Boise High grad Matteo Jorgensen is back in town after competing in his very first Tour de France. Now, he told Brian Holmes that there were definitely some nerves, but once those subsided, he nearly made the podium. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Matteo had 2 fourth-place finishes and 1 fifth-place finish, something he told us that he was disappointed with.
Yeah, I have to say, I'll admit the first week before we started the tour, when it was all kind of the lead up, and yeah, I was nervous. I mean, it was a big moment, and the tour is the biggest bike race in the world, so definitely I was nervous. Yeah, 4th is like the worst place in cycling. I mean, it just doesn't, it's not good for anything, you know? It's like not a podium, you're up there, but you didn't really do anything. So yeah, it was pretty disappointing. All I can take from it is that, you know, I showed myself well.
Okay, so yeah, overall then, your first time out and you do as well as you did, that's got to feel pretty good and feel like there are better chances for you.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's super motivating. I mean, I actually feel super motivated to go back out on my bike and work hard and try to have a good second half of the year and try to win a race.
You can watch that entire interview right now at KTVB.com. Matteo will be home for a few more days before he heads back to Europe, where he will hang back on the racing circuit with the race in Germany later this month. Good luck, Matteo. We're going to wrap up the show here in a few minutes, take a break for the 208 for the weekend. But I want to remind you all, if you want to connect with us when the 208's not on your TV, you can find us on your social media networks. You can go on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You can send us an email. You can call the text number. You can leave us a voicemail. There's so many ways to connect with us. We love seeing your questions and comments. Keep them coming. If you ever have anything to share, these are the places to do it. And speaking of sharing comments, oh boy, do we have a few to get to here on Friday. This person says, does Ada County need poll workers this November? Might be interested in this, but not driving to the 2C. John, I can tell you this. Always reach out to your county and see if they need poll worker volunteers. The answer is always yes. They're never going to turn you away if you want to come volunteer and help the situation at the election cycle. So reach out to your county clerk and say, what can I do? They'll put you to work. Another thing, though, if you did want to go drive to the 2C and you do live in Ada County, you are allowed to. So you're not county locked. So if you were interested in driving to the 2C to help them, you're welcome to. Also, real quick, a traffic alert in New Meadows. Janice Whitney says, here's a traffic alert, a little bit of deer action in the middle of the street. So watch out for that. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.